thank you for joining us for our Last Chance to Paint webinar with John Dyer, brought to you by Born Free. In this session, we'll be learning all about the Amazon rainforest and learning about one of the fantastic animals that lives there, the capybara, and you'll get a chance to paint that as well. My name's Charlie, and my colleague Laura is busy working in the background to help answer some of your questions. But without further ado, it's my absolute delight to introduce artist and creative partner of Born Free, John Dyer. So say hello, John.
Hi, thank you everybody for joining us on this Last Chance to Paint Amazon Rainforest Capybara webinar. That's a mouthful, isn't it? So yeah, absolutely thrilled that you're taking the time to join us and to learn with Born Free, with Charlie and myself, art and wildlife and climate change and rainforest and lots of interesting things. So yeah, I can't wait to get started.
Brilliant. Thank you, John. So as well as being a really talented artist, John is also the founder of Last Chance to Paint, a project that aims to connect children to nature through art and creativity. And you can find all three of John's Last Chance to Paint creative schemes of work, including a module called Person the Forest, which looks closely at the forests of Borneo, and John's most recent trip to Kenya in the Precious Africa module. And on the Born Free website and on the Last Chance to Paint websites, you can find both of those and the Amazon adventure as well. And again, those will shortly be posted into the chat box for you to find. So yeah, if you'd like to find out more about the rainforests of South America, Asia, and the African savannah, do please go have a look at those. We'd love for you to be part of the journey. Now, in a moment, John's going to start creating his artwork. You guys are going to start creating your artwork as well. John is going to be using an online program called Procreate, so a little bit different to you guys painting live, but don't panic. It's all part of the process. It's all part of the journey. Get mixing colors, mixing paints. I'm sure it will look absolutely beautiful. But as soon as he gets started, you're welcome to start your paintings as well and follow along with John. And we will pause occasionally to allow you to guys to catch up if we're going a little bit quickly as well. We'll be looking at some amazing maps, and we'll be looking at some more Last Chance to Paint things as well. So John, when you're ready, off we go.
What I do, let's just share my iPad screen so everybody can see what I'm doing. I use the iPad because it's just a really good way to show you how I work, and it just goes up on those lovely whiteboards you've got at the school. So that's the way we're doing this. So yeah, so I'll show you a little bit more about Last Chance to Paint when we've got some of the paint drying. And I'm just going to start off. So I've got this blank piece of paper or digital paper, as you have. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put down some blue sky. So we're going to build a rainforest scene here on a riverbank, and then we're going to put the capybara on the sides of the river and some Amazon rainforest trees in the background. This is what we're aiming for. So I'm going to start with a wider brush, and I'm just going to put in some blues in the background here. It does, so any sort of blue you want to just put on the background here. It will look like I'm going really fast, but actually, if you get some blue paint and you can just sort of like go across the paper, and hopefully you're using water-based paint, you can go off the side of the paper, like I've done. I'm actually just using my Apple Pencil on a little mini iPad here. That shows you what I've got here. And yeah, just get some blues down. You can mix in some different blues if you like. I'm going to put some paler blues in because it can get quite sort of misty. Well, not misty, but there's a lot of humidity in the rainforest. And I'm painting a scene here from one of the tributaries of the Amazon rainforest, the Rio Gregorio, which is where I traveled in 2019 to paint and learn with the Yawanawa tribe. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So just get some blues on there.
So John, so you said one top tip was actually to go off the edges of the paper, which is amazing. Yeah. Do you have any other top tips whilst they're putting down the background or whilst they're making their painting?
Yeah, absolutely. You might have different shapes of brushes in your school, or you might not. So if you've just got one small brush, that's what you've got to work with. And as they say with photography, the best camera is the camera you've got on you. So the best paintbrush is the paintbrush you've got in front of you. But if you have a choice, you could choose a slightly wider brush or even a flat brush, which is wider. And then if you use that on its widest point, you can get a lovely sort of blend in the background rather than a round brush. I don't have any brushes on my desk to show you here, which I should do really. But if you imagine sort of a brush like two centimeters across by just a few millimeters high, it's a typical wide sort of rectangular brush. That would be ideal for a background. That's how I put my backgrounds down of my paintings. There's some paintings behind me in the shot. And then I use round, typically what you get in the school is a round brush, a bit like the end of a pencil really. And I use those for trees and details and capybara. So yeah, and then the next part of this, I'm just going to start sketching the river, and I'm going to use some pale blues, maybe slightly more aquarry, and I'm just going to bring in some colours here. So if you're using watercolours, just go for some pale colours. Ideally, you'd be using poster paints, which will react in a much more similar way to what I'm doing on Procreate. And they are a sponsor for Last Chance to Paint, lovely company. But if you're using watercolour, just put down some pale colours, and I'm just going to sketch in here just some very soft colours of a river. So this is the Rio Gregorio, a tributary of the Amazon. The Amazon's enormous. In some parts, the Amazon is wider than the English Channel. It's absolutely huge. Whereas the tributaries, you tend to see more wildlife. You're closer to the rainforest. You feel more immersed. And that's where a lot of the tribes will live, on the tributaries of the Amazon rainforest. So, and something I was when I was a student doing my degree, I had no idea that there were huge cities in the Amazon rainforest, like really major ones. And that goes back to the rubber trade, or the rubber for car tires, and like tennis shoes and all sorts of things like that. Cushioning things in industry was all coming from the Amazon, from the rubber trees. So it was a very wealthy place, and there's quite a complicated history in the Amazon. But when you go along the tributaries, then you start to reach the indigenous people, which I should tell you all, you should never do unless you have an invitation to do so. You shouldn't ever just turn up when you're older. Don't just book a ticket and go to the Amazon or Peru or anywhere in the world and expect to go into a village any more than you'd expect an Amazon Indian to knock on your door and welcome him or herself into your family. It's just not done. And there's all sorts of reasons why that shouldn't happen. So I just say that because the history of people exploring the Amazon has been relatively, well, in fact, catastrophic historically for many of the tribes. And one must be very careful with that. But as for Last Chance to Paint, we had an invitation to work with the Yamanawa tribe, as I know one of the tribal members who I actually met at the Eden Project in 2015. And Nishiwaka Yawanawa and myself have formed a firm friendship. In fact, I was only talking to him yesterday. Isn't that bizarre? They've got internet working again in the tribal village. And
that is amazing.
It is, isn't it? I was communicating with him about using Facebook Messenger of all things. But they've got connectivity for messaging. So I keep in touch with him and his wife, which is really lovely. And watching his family grow up on Instagram. Bizarre.
Oh, fantastic. That's amazing, John. Amazing as well. Obviously, they're so connected as well, which is fantastic. And you're able to keep in touch, which is lovely. What was it like as well, visiting the tribe out in the Amazon?
Oh, it was so many things. It was like every emotion you could have. It was exhilarating, frightening. It was exciting. It was tiring. It was terrible. It was wonderful. It's everything you can imagine. So, I'll show you a map in a second for everybody while everybody's catching up with this, and then I'll talk through a little bit more about that. What I'm doing here, Charlie, is I'm just putting on a sandbank, and you can use yellows, you can use earthy colours, and there's sandbanks all along the shallows of the Amazon and the tributaries. And this is where our capybaras, some of them are going to be sat or standing in a minute, a family. So if the children can develop this sort of composition, if you can all remember that roughly, if you can get to that stage, I'll show you a map. Is that an appropriate moment just to cut to the map, do you think? Will people be all right with that?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I love that you've got that lovely meander in there, John. It looks absolutely brilliant. And then the sandbank as well. So if you're learning about rivers in your classes, you'll know all about the meanders that twist and turn in the rivers. And also oxbow lakes as well. There's lots of oxbow lakes in the Amazon where those meanders have been cut off and they're just surrounded by rainforest, which is absolutely amazing. So hopefully you can see a map on the board right now.
Yeah, and so this map, so this is Google Earth, and I think it's always lovely to give you context of where we're painting. And there'll be capybara living around this part of the rainforest, all across South America, in fact, well, around the Amazon basin region. So what you can see here, this is the tribal village of Mutum, where the part of the Yawanawa tribe live. They've got 6 or 7 tribal villages like this, where they're clear, some trees, and they'll just live pretty much in balance with the forest. And some of this land, you can see there's trees missing where there'll be farming areas, and they'll keep crops like bananas, and they'll have manioc, which is like a root vegetable, and they'll have a certain number of chickens and ducks and certain amount of food which is raised locally. And then obviously, well, not obviously, but then they do go off and they hunt as well occasionally. That is obviously important for their protein, but it's also, I wouldn't say it's ceremonial, but it's also part of their culture to do so. It's not always necessary, and fishing is very important for them. So this is where we arrived. So now you can see some of these meanders in the Rio Gregorio, and this is coming from the top of your screen. This is where I arrived, and eventually went up this tiny tributary, which I'm zooming in on here, and it was pitch black in the middle of the night when we finally arrived, after traveling for nearly 8 hours up the Rio Gregorio. So if I zoom out, you can start to see the trip that we went on. Now this trip, and every day we were there, we've got these wonderful teaching resources you can show to the children, available on lastchancetopaint.com. So you can take them traveling with us. And look at these meanders, look how it goes. And you get oxbow lakes and everything in this amazing river system. So this is going further and further out from the Rio Gregorio. And then if we keep going out, you will eventually see there, São Vicente. Can you see that right up there? That's where the river trip started for us. And all these meanders later, this is 8 hours, you end up at the tribe. And all this dark green is thick, dense, natural rainforest. So I'm going to zoom out a bit further to show you just how big the Amazon is and where we were. It took nearly a week traveling to get there. So we zoom out, I can give you some context here.
So you can see how absolutely enormous the Amazon is. So just for context, obviously we've zoomed out a huge distance already. John said it took him all day to reach there, but the Amazon is so big, the whole of the UK could fit inside that rainforest 17 times. So
17.
It is absolutely enormous, yes.
17 times, that is enormous. So on the left you can see Peru, and then on the right where we were is Brazil, and then towards the top you've got Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and that is part of South America. And the Amazon basin, the Amazon rainforest, is a wild, beautiful forest, but it is in danger. So when I was a student, I traveled along the Amazon, and I'm just going to zoom in briefly before going out again. And all of these areas here, which you can see are fields and farmland, this was all rainforest when I was 22 years old. I'm 56 now. So in kind of, 30 odd years, it's all been cleared, and it's been cleared at an increasing rate. So that's broadly been cleared to grow soybeans, to feed chickens in China, for things like fast food in the UK and America. That's a very bad exchange of natural resources. And also for beef, for fast food. Again, very bad. So that is literally robbing us of oxygen and our future. And Charlie, the oxygen the Amazon produces is significant, isn't it?
Absolutely. So yeah, the Amazon are sometimes referred to as the lungs of the earth, and that is because the Amazon produces so much oxygen from all the trees and all the plants that are there. What happens is, obviously, the trees absorb some carbon dioxide, and as a result of creating their own food, that produces oxygen. So the oxygen they produce is around 20% of the world's oxygen. So that is a huge amount that they are producing. So actually, if we were to take 5 breaths now, so breathe in and out, in and out, in, out. I'll let you do a couple more times, try not to get dizzy. But one of those breaths has come from the Amazon rainforest. So that is absolutely incredible. So they are such a vital and important habitat, not just for all the wildlife and all the plants that live there, and there are actually hundreds of thousands, not millions of species, millions of species of insects living in the Amazon. They're so important for those wild creatures, but they're really important for us as well. So it's really important we protect it as well. So, and I think John is now zooming in on the UK, so you can see for context where the Amazon is in comparison to us. So it's a really long way away. It's all the way across the Atlantic Ocean in South America, but it has a big impact on our climate, on the oxygen that we breathe as well. It's a really, really important place for the whole world, for the whole planet. So it's absolutely really important we protect it, and that we think about how we can protect it, because it is so far away, and it is really easy to sometimes actually think, oh, it's so far away, what can I do? What can I do to help? But there are loads of things that, and small things that we can do to make a difference. So, for example, as John said, a lot of land is being cleared for farmland to produce beef, to produce soybeans, which are then fed in most part to animals. So actually thinking about, maybe I'm going to reduce my meat intake. That's a really massive thing that we can all do to help protect the environment. So less meat is great because we're not using as much of that space in the Amazon as well. Even just really little things like when you leave your classroom, if you turn off your light, turn off your computers, then that's an amazing thing that you can do, because a lot of the energy that is going into power those light bulbs, power those electronics, is still produced by burning fossil fuels. And that then contributes to climate change. Now, climate change is affecting habitats and environments all the way around the planet. And this includes the Amazon rainforest, where the climate is changing. It is becoming a little bit more difficult for plants and animals to survive and adapt to those new and changing climates. So by using less energy, we're contributing less to climate change, and we are helping in our own small way. So if we all did a little thing, if we all turned our light off when we're not using it, turn off our electronics when we're not using them, especially things like chargers for our phones and our tablets and our games consoles. If you turn that off at the wall when it's not charging something, that makes a massive difference. And if we all did that, it would be an infinite distance. It'd be absolutely fantastic, not just for the Amazon, but lots of habitats around the planet.
Yeah, and your parents will thank you too, because they'll save a little bit of money too.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
And moving forward, eventually, if all of our governments and can get their act together, and they will. It will just take longer than we think, and that's always the case. But it will happen. The future is bright in terms of energy generation. You only need, and this would be another map thing, but we're not going to do that now because we're doing rainforest trees. You only need a very small square in the middle of the Sahara Desert, as an example, really quite a tiny chunk of the Sahara Desert with entirely solar panels, and that could provide enough electricity for the whole planet as a theorized thing. You wouldn't be able to pipe it, or you would send it on cables all the way from the Sahara to America without losing power. But it's a useful thing to think about. You need to take a tiny little chunk of that desert, and really quite small as a quadrant, and we can make enough renewable energy. So I think the point I'm making there is, the more solar panels go on properties, the more solar panels on industrial units, the more local battery storage for that energy, relatively quickly, and also economically, they will be driven because it will be cheaper. We will end up with a clean energy source, and then hopefully in about 10 years, bountiful energy source. But we will see. We will see. At the moment, we need to reduce what we.
There is positive news. That's the main thing. So things are changing, and things are looking positive, which is great. Brilliant. So, John, I can see you're adding trees, but we've also got a question from Winscombe Primary School in North Somerset, and they would like to know, when did you start painting?
Oh, the same as everybody in your class. So we all start painting as children, don't we? And I particularly enjoyed it at school and at home. My father still is an artist. He's 84 this year. So I grew up in a household where, in fact, both my mum and my dad painted. And I loved that. But I didn't know I wanted to paint. But I would go out with my father, and I'd always have a sketchbook and a camera. And often I'd have a magnifying glass, and often books about nature. And I would just really love the environment. And painting and drawing and photographing was my way of celebrating, recording, and understanding it. So I kept doing that, and then I just never stopped. Then I went to art school. Didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be involved visually with something. It could have been sculpture. It could have been animation. It could have been designing typefaces. I didn't really know. And then I decided I actually loved photography. That was going to be my big thing. And I was already published at age 11 in a magazine. And I had my first publishing contract with a poster company, which you had never heard of, but your teachers might, with Athena by the time I was 17. And that was going great. And eventually I was sent by a television company. Again, your teachers, some of your teachers, not all of them, might have heard of Thames Television, which none of you children will, because it went out of existence a long time ago. They paid for me to go to the Amazon rainforest in 1989. And I went there to photograph the forest and to record its natural beauty in a very particular way. And I had an amazing time, a life-changing time in a very positive way. But when I came back from the Amazon, having spent it's only 3 weeks sort of going along the Amazon, up the Rio Negro, and the Tapajós, and tiny tributaries where you could literally only just get like a dugout canoe up them. I realized when I got back that I didn't want to photograph anymore. I wanted to paint, because I couldn't for me, this is only for me, I couldn't capture in a painting everything I felt about the place, everything I heard about the place, everything I smelt about the place, everything that the warmth of it, the people, the atmosphere, the wildlife, the things I saw the day before, the things I saw 2 weeks before on that trip, the things that were behind me, the colors that were in my mind rather than that were in front of me. And my camera couldn't do that, but painting could. It released my inner soul into my creative spirit, into my creative process. And I've painted ever since, just painted from the heart. So that's what made me a painter, was going to the Amazon rainforest.
Amazing. Thank you, John. So yeah, a really big inspiration for you on that trip, which is fantastic. And yeah, absolutely. You can see all your energy going into your painting. And I'm sure those of you painting today in your classrooms, I'm sure you'll have your own unique style. Even if you're taking inspiration from John and copying what he's doing, you'll be able to see yourself in that painting, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and you don't need to copy what I'm doing slavishly. It's basically a riverbank, and I'm doing the canopy, which is where most of the life of the rainforest will be hanging out.
Yeah.
Capybara is not, because they're not tree climbers, but most of the biodiversity you will find in the canopy. That's right, isn't it, Charlie?
That is. So it's around 90% of all life lives in that top layer, that canopy. And that's because that's where most of the sunshine is. In fact, the canopy is so thick, those trees are blocking so much light that actually, if you're still on the forest floor, it's quite dark. So you have all your fruits, lots of butterflies, insects, monkeys, birds, all living in that top canopy. And there'll be very few animals actually living on the ground. As John said, capybara, who we are going to start painting a little bit later on, are not good at tree climbing. However, they actually spend a lot of their time in the water. They can spend hours at a time in the water. So rather than being tree dwellers, they are semi-aquatic animals. They love being by the water and in the water. So whilst they don't live up a tree, they're by the river, which is great. And I love these beautiful tree trunks that you're starting to add in there, John. So for these, would you be using a much thinner brush than you have previously?
I would be, and on the left-hand side of my screen, you can see I can adjust the brush size on this top slider. So this is like my cheat system of how to do it, but also I've set up my brush so when I tilt it, it creates different brush shapes. But yes, I would be using a fine brush, and if I was using poster paints, I'd be using some thicker, so not watered down white paint, and just painting on top. And if it bleeds a little bit, that's fine. It's a painting. It's supposed to be artistic and fun. And yeah, and the trunks of the trunks of a lot of the trees will show up, not white, but they will be really quite bright against the really dark forest background. So it's quite notable. You see this as you go up through the forest, and it basically looks exactly like this. And you don't see much wildlife because it is basically all in canopy, but you do hear it, and it's like a cathedral of sound. It's quite astonishing. You will hear the toucans, you will hear the macaws, you will hear the howler monkeys, you will hear the frogs and the buzz of the insects, you will hear all sorts of things, but you won't see it. And I think that's something people need to know before they travel to a rainforest, that you need to expect to see something that's not dissimilar to the woods in any country, but a lot hotter and with a much bigger soundtrack. You know, it's I mean, the background behind Charlie is a really good example of what a rainforest looks like at the forest floor level.
Absolutely, yeah, much darker than you might expect. Absolutely. And then, yeah, if you were to climb to the top of the trees, the canopy, obviously there'd be very bright sunshine, and that's where the leaves are capturing that sunlight,
Yeah,
using that carbon dioxide, converting that into their own energy, their own food,
and
which is really cool.
it's striking. I've gone up with the WWF back in when I went with Thames Television up a scaffolding tower in a reserve, the Duque Reserve, with the Brazilian scientific institution. And when you get to the top of this tower, part of the fact it was rotted and it fell through this thing because all the wood had gone, their heat, the difference in temperature is extraordinary, because instead of it being like a bonny, I don't know, 26 to 28 on the forest floor, which and humid, so that's pretty hot. You go up and suddenly it's like 40 because you've got no shade from these trees. And it's very notable that if we, in urban situations, you know, even in our own country, in London, if you take the trees down, it's, you know, when we get those very hot summers, 35 degrees, if those trees aren't there, the temperature of the city will shoot up a lot further, a lot further. So they're a cooling mechanism.
Yeah, so trees are really important, like we said, not just for that oxygen, but yeah, also to help cool things down. So that's an amazing difference in temperature from the bottom in the
yeah,
forest floor to the top, John.
it's incredible. And then the view across the canopy of the forest is just extraordinary. And then you do see birds, and mainly birds. You see, you know, you'd be very lucky to see a mammal out in the day in the rainforest. So how are we
Absolutely.
doing, Tom? Are the schools keeping up
Lovely.
where we are?
Yeah, I think so. So we've got some questions as well, a lot about your art, John. So I'll run through a couple of those if that's okay while you're
Yeah.
continuing to paint. Um, so Hob Hill Primary in Rudgley says, what is your favourite thing to paint?
Seagulls.
Oh, lovely. Oh, interesting. I really like that.
Yeah, well, I paint them a lot based in Cornwall. I'm quite known for my seagulls. You can see a couple behind me here on a couple of t-shirts, just happen to be hanging around. And they are fun to paint, but actually birds are really fun to paint because you can get the essence of a bird, and the wing shape's quite telling. So if you've got something from like a crow or a raven, it's going to have a feathered, or even a vulture sort of feathering at the end of its wings. A parrot has a much more kind of angular shape to it. I do like painting birds, and they add great depth to a painting, because if you put a bird on that's quite big, it's clearly closer. Because our brain won't go, oh, that's a massive seagull. Our brain will go, oh, that seagull's closer to us. So it's a really easy way to get depth or perspective into a painting without following all the rules of perspective.
Oh, brilliant. That's
Yeah.
a really good top tip. I like that, John. Brilliant.
Right, I'm going to put capybara in. Can I do that? Are they ready?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're ready for some capybara. So, John, first of all, you've told me earlier that you have seen capybara in the wild.
Ah.
What is a capybara? What does it look like? Describe it to the students watching.
Oh gosh, so they're the world's largest rodent. They're really quite lovely to watch. They can grow to about sort of 4 feet plus in length as an adult. So they're quite large. They're much larger than a guinea pig, but they're kind of related to that family of animals. So 4 feet is about it's over a meter in length. So they can be quite large.
Really tall.
The babies are cute as anything. They love hanging around in pools of water, still water. They will just kind of like spend all day in there, and then they will come onto the shore and kind of lollop around with their lovely webbed feet. And I saw them just south of the Amazon rainforest, where the Amazon starts to break into savanna. There's a big area called the Pantanal. It's a beautiful wetland tropical area. It kind of borders the Amazon south of the Amazon basin. And that's where I saw them. And they were everywhere, in every pool, along with caiman, and along with amazing birds and vultures, and yeah, basically extraordinary. But yeah, I really like capybara. So I think let's draw a really kind of simple capybara. I'll do one standing up. So I'm going to just do one here, sort of stood up on the sandbank here, and I'll do it relatively large, as if it's close to us, because we can't quite tell where we are in this painting yet. But just so we've got something to go at. So
Brilliant.
if you, I suppose the way I tend to draw it out, but just to make it sort of, I guess, easy-ish. With a fine brush, if you sort of roughly, I'm just going to do this in the orange. They're not orange, by the way, but they are kind of like a lovely goldeny brown, hairy colour. And when you get the sun on them in the evening, they do kind of go orangey, but orange is a great colour to use. So let's use orange, or you can even go towards a red if you want, but they are not red. But you could do it because we're making a painting, but I'm using an orange. If you sort of basically sketched out a rectangle like that, can you see that?
Perfect.
And then if you sketched, it's not going to stay a rectangle, and then if you sketched out another rectangle here, like that, you've almost got capybara already. Now, to make this accurate, more accurate, we're gonna draw a shape around it. So I've just changed my color slightly. I will make this a reddier color so you can see. Do you want me to zoom in? I know the schools don't like me zooming in very much, but do you think it would be useful to zoom in? What do you think, Charlie?
We can probably zoom in just a little bit. Yeah, brilliant.
I will zoom in so that we can focus on this animal for the moment. I think because with the river and the trees, you just make it up as you go along. It's a lovely subject to do. And if I was in the real Gregorio painting now, I'd just be making it up. But let's crack on with these because time is pushing. So with this point, we're going to draw some curves around it. So we're going to take that point and we're going to put like a forehead on this, just up there, because it's obviously not got a square face. And then it's going to go down to its back. And once we've done this outline with your brush, then we can block in some colour. And then it's got a very sort of round rump. Would be the right? Would that be the right word? The back of it, the end of it.
So if you've got guinea pigs at home, that's a really good thing to take inspiration from, because a capybara is essentially, as John said, a very large guinea pig. They are the world's largest rodents. They're related to guinea pigs, to squirrels, chinchillas, those kind of animals that love to graze. They're all herbivores, and their teeth will constantly grow. So it's really important that guinea pigs and capybara, they keep eating constantly because it helps wear down their very strong, powerful teeth. But yeah, this is looking lovely, John.
That's the same as a rabbit. Rabbits have to keep eating as well, otherwise their teeth literally become a problem because they keep growing.
Yeah.
So
and they're a rodent as well. So they're quite a very diverse group. So
they are,
yeah.
and they do share quite an interesting, unusual, and undinner table habit with rabbits as well, don't they, Charlie?
They absolutely do. So capybara, like guinea pigs, like rabbits, like many other rodents, what they will actually do is, because their digestive system, they eat loads and loads and loads constantly, but they can't always necessarily get all the nutrients out the first time round digesting their food. So they have quite a rather, they have quite an interesting habit that they do. So you might possibly have noticed, if you've got rodents at home, so your guinea pigs, your rabbits, your hamsters, they will actually eat their own poo. So they will digest their food, they will go to the toilet and they will eat that, and then they'll get that extra nutrients that they didn't get the first time around. So actually it's a really important survival technique for these animals. It actually means that they can get all those nutrients that they need from their food, and they can extract all those vital vitamins that they need to survive.
And animals that tend to eat a lot of grasses and simple leaves like that. I mean, a cow is a good example. It is not a rodent and it doesn't eat its own food, but it has two stomachs.
Absolutely. So, and they'll also do something called chewing the cud as well. So cows and other animals, they actually will digest and chew, and then you might see in them actually occasionally they'll actually essentially vomit the grass back into their mouth and chew it again to extract even more nutrients. So yeah, it's quite a tough life being a plant predator, having to digest all that food all the time.
I can't imagine the gasp from the shock in the classrooms, but this is great. Okay, so now we're just going to block in our capybara. So we've got that lovely outline, and it doesn't matter what it looks like, really. It doesn't matter if it's exactly like I've done. Mine's not. The head on mine's a bit big. It doesn't really matter. We if you can readjust it, so we could actually put a bit more rump on it here to get it more in proportion. But it's not at all critical. What we're interested in is you enjoying your painting and learning about the rainforest and being inspired about it, so you can all play your own part in treading gently on planet Earth. So yeah, so that we're not destroying it, because it's a very important place, very, very important, as we said. And it's also,
Brilliant.
interestingly enough, and we tend to think of the rainforest as a completely natural ecosystem, which it is, but it's also very influenced from mankind over the many hundreds of thousands of years. So if you imagine if you're living in a tribe up the Rio Gregorio, for example, and you need to go off hunting, and you're going to be out for, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 days. When you camp overnight, you need certain foods with there. So you will find it's planted right across the Amazon basin. There'll be particular palm trees that are used for foods, or banana plants. There'll be particular herbs that are growing for medicine. So everything you might need for medical care, for making weapons, for making shelters, and for eating, you will find planted right across the Amazon basin. It is quite an amazing ecosystem. And if we go back in time, there were pretty big civilizations living in the Amazon basin and using it. So I think that's fascinating. It's actually being, so basically, the point I'm going to make here, what we're doing now to the Amazon is we are plundering it, we are exploiting it, we are removing more than we can from it, and we're leaving it degraded, with no nutrients and with very little ability to naturally regenerate. Although forests will regenerate given enough time, but not if we keep hitting it. Because what we used to do, well, not us, but the tribes would do, was they would be in balance with it. They would take some and they would care for it, and it would just be a completely balanced ecosystem. And we are part of the ecosystem, and we have a right to be on our beautiful planet, along with the capybara, but we have to be more in tune with it than we have been over the last, well, since industrialization, since we became an industrialized society. That's where things started to go quite badly wrong. But knowledge, like this last Chance to Paint webinar, is everything, because then we can start to make a change. Right, I'm going to put some features on my capybara, because we're going to do hopefully a few. I'm just going to start up here with the ear, and let's have a look here. So yeah, the ears are great because they allow them to, obviously a capybara is a plant eating animal, but it also does mean it's going to be lunch or supper for something else. So they're going to have to hear really well. So they like to protect their ears, and because they dive in the water, and they'll be looking for plants and things to eat, or they might just dive to hide, to get away from a predator. They can hold their breath for, I think it's 5 minutes, isn't it, Charlie? They can hold their breath maximum.
Yeah, it's a really long time. So yeah,
It is a
5
long
minutes. And that's
time.
because they are, like I said, they are herbivores, so they are predated upon by larger predators that live in the Amazon. So that includes the jaguar. So they are one of the favorite prey of jaguar, and jaguar are very smart, intelligent, big cats, and they will even hunt animals, including the capybara and caiman, by pouncing onto them into the water. So even
Oh,
sometimes when they're in the water, capybara can't escape. But yes, they're very good at diving. They are able to go under the water for 5 minutes in order to help them escape, and also, like you said, to find food as well. They are excellent swimmers, and as you can see, probably from John's painting, they actually have webbed toes.
they
So
do.
that's just like if you imagine a frog or a duck that have uh, essentially flaps of skin between their digits, as it were. It helps them to swim because it helps push that water when they're moving through the water and makes them much, much quicker swimmers. So
I
yeah,
thought it was just to make them cuter, but no, they obviously work like little flippers. And then when they're under the water, those ears, which might keep them safe from a predator, they squish them down. They flap them down onto the
yeah,
top of their head to stop the water going in them, so that when
yeah,
they surface, they can hear really well again. Otherwise, they might be eaten by the jaguar that's kind of swimming behind them.
yeah,
So
absolutely. So yeah, if you notice on John's painting as well, not only are their ears on top of their head, their eyes and their nose are as well. So if you imagine them just sitting in the water, they can be almost totally submerged apart from nose, eyes, and ears. So they can look around them, they can smell what's going on, they can make sure that there's no predators lurking around. So imagine a hippo, pretty similar to that. They can just be out with just their head above the surface, just the top of their head, so they can stay nice and hidden.
they are lovely. And do you see how what their noses are like? They're kind of round, and their kind of nickname, their colloquial name is water pig.
Yeah.
because it's got this flat nose with their little sort of black nostrils on the end. So you can see why they're called water pigs, which is just so they're such fun. But you won't want to get too close to a capybara because if they're threatened, they've got pretty sharp teeth. You don't want to be bitten by one at all.
No, absolutely. So yeah, they do seem quite docile, but just like any other wild animal, they they will want to protect their young, they want to protect themselves. They, like John said, can inflict quite a nasty bite, and they are really heavy as well. They can weigh up to 65 kilograms. So imagine your bag of sugar, your kilo bag of sugar, stack 65 of those up and try and lift them up. That's going to be quite a challenge. They are very, very heavy animals, and they are very strong as well. And that's because they're so good at swimming. They can run as well, up to 22 miles per hour. So they are built to survive. Essentially, they're built to get away
22,
from those jaguar. Yeah,
22 miles an hour. So they'll be setting all the speed cameras off around us. That's most of this is
absolutely.
20. That's quite an impressive speed, isn't it? So
It is.
it's
Yeah,
quite
it
lovely.
helps
So
them to escape and either jump in the water or go into the forest to get away from those predators.
I'm going to start putting more capybara in here. I think. How do you think? Are they? Is everybody keeping up? You think?
I think so. I think we've not had any comments, so I think we're doing great. So yeah, thank you. We have got quite a few questions coming into the chat box, John.
Oh,
So
good.
I'm going to go through a couple of those if that's okay, and
Yeah.
then we can carry on talking about capybara and your painting, which is looking absolutely amazing.
Oh, it's going to be so
Brilliant. So we have Hadman at Moorside Primary has said, if you didn't paint, what else would you do?
It's a really good question. Well, I did train in graphic design, so I'd probably be involved with design, websites, making books, magazines, advertising, that kind of thing. However,
Lovely. So something really creative.
however, I know that after doing that for about 3 weeks after I graduated, I found that it wasn't my thing. So I might have gone into robotics and engineering and creativity. I also find that quite fascinating. I'm quite techy.
Yeah. But
So
that's great. So actually you can do creative things in lots of different industries, which is fantastic. So if you are a creative person, you like art, there are so many different routes you can go down. And I think there's another question as well we have asking if you have any tips, John, for any budding artists.
gosh, yeah, just I guess my top tip would be to just be aware of the world all the time. If you're not inspired by the world around you, by just going out on a walk, a day in the city, a day in the park, a day on the beach, wherever you go, your local pond, walking around a supermarket, the colours, the labels, the sight, the sounds. If none of that's firing you up as a visually, then maybe that's not your thing. But if it is, then I would start recording it in some way. I would start photographing it. I would, and homing in on little things. What the side of a custard label is that red and that yellow looks really good, and the blue. Start scrapbooking it, and then start taking a drawing book out with you and doing little sketches, making little notes, writing poetry. Just start recording your reactions to the world, and through that process, you might find that you're really drawn to suddenly become a podcaster, or you want to go into creating movies, or you might find actually the way furniture is put together is just incredible, and you just love the way that wood fits together, and you might go into carpentry, or you might find that you love interiors, and you might find working with color, and then you might find, well, actually I am going to be a painter or an interior designer, or I'm going to spec out the next chain of Starbucks or something. I mean, but to get to that point where what you want to do as a visual practitioner or as a creative, you need to start reacting to the world.
So yeah, take inspiration from everything around you. That's a really good top tip, John. Thank you so much. And actually, it's really nice to hear your story and actually know that you weren't always a painter. It wasn't the only thing you've ever done. You've tried lots of other different things as well. So that's a really important thing, I think, for young people watching, actually, to know that your path isn't set in stone and that you can try lots of different things, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
We've got another lovely question. This is about your expeditions, John. This is from Clother class in Moorside Primary, and they said they watched one of your last chance to paint videos where you talked about putting your canvas in an ant's nest. Now they've said, have you had any other mishaps on your travels in the Amazon and also on your last chance to paint trips?
Oh, with painting, all the time. there's stuff goes into it. I just start in the wrong way. I have to wipe stuff off. You have to be careful. I mean, painting the last two northern rhino, I'd literally, if any of you haven't followed the Kenyan expedition, you should watch that one, because I was suddenly presented with the very last two northern white rhino on planet Earth, both female. So it's a subspecies that will go extinct in our lifetimes, as far as I can tell, unless some incredible science comes through. But you know, it's functionally extinct. And I'd set myself up to paint them, you know, as I did, but I had no concept of how big they were, how fast they moved, how windy it was going to be, and the fact I had a team of people from the Conservancy, the Born Free team, loads of people, and the expectation was high. And I was like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I can't. How do I set up? You know, like we're doing this now for an hour. How do can I just ask them to sit there? You know, then they didn't want to play. So I suddenly had to completely reinvent on the fly how I painted and how I reacted and how I moved. And yeah, that worked out really well, but it could have gone either way. It could have gone really badly wrong. But in Cornwall, I've had all sorts of events. You know, I'd put a painting on top of a wall, I'd be painting away, and a couple of hours in, a dog would run straight through it. I've been sat by the side of the road on a bench painting, you know, across an estuary somewhere, and I put my painting down temporarily, and then a car will just not see it and pass another car and drive straight through the middle of it. All sorts of things happen. All sorts of unfortunate insects get stuck in my paintings. And occasionally they find an insect in Vincent van Gogh's painting because he works in the fields. It's a thing that happens, sadly. Occasionally something will get stuck in the paint.
Gosh.
But yeah, there's lots of things. But with Last Chance to Paint, I will find myself in an uncomfortable, out of my depth zone. And then I quickly have to adapt and just go, I'm going to make this work. And a bit like today on the webinar, and like you're doing in your classrooms, whatever the end result is a success as long as we keep doing the process. There's no expectation what the final result looks like. It's not a photograph. It's not supposed to look like any particular artist's work. It is what it is. And the process is much more important than the final painting. So that's what I get from Last Chance to Paint. You know, so in Borneo, for the person of the forest one, which is what orangutan means, person of the forest. That's basically the rough translation of orangutan. I'm painting away, and my eldest daughter, who's doing filming and blogging and working on that one, again, please follow that one. Suddenly she has a baby orangutan climbing up. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have to stop the painting. So with that, okay, so yeah.
Especially if you're an outdoor painter, if you love wildlife, just be prepared for anything. I think that's what we've learned from this.
Yeah, anything. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't matter. You can always take it back to the studio and continue. But yeah, just be prepared for anything. Anything goes. Right, I'm going to continue putting some of these, getting these on. I'm going to put a bit of texture on this one and just bring this along.
So, because yeah, like you said, John, capybara, they have really kind of shaggy fur, don't they?
They do. They do. They're really quite shaggy. So, in fact, why's my pencil not doing that? I'm going to swap. It's doing a digital don't want to play. So,
so again, when we're adding this texture, John, do you have any top tips for those who are painting along at the moment?
A small brush, and you will have the added advantage of actual texture. So you could, I say this hesitantly, you could use slightly thicker paint, but don't go crazy with this, because you're probably working on quite a small area of your painting. Just to zoom out, you can see here. So I just do this as a zoomed out for those that are still working in other areas. But I'm just going to put just an indication of some of the sort of hair on here. But you could get some thicker paint. You can roll your brush. So I've got an Apple Pencil here, which I can't. It's great, but you can actually sort of swivel. It doesn't even show it because it's white, but you can swivel it in your fingers as you're putting the paint down. So if you put a paintbrush down and it's picking up some of the darker colour, if you twizzle it, it will keep delivering fresh colour. You could try that. That's quite
amazing.
a good tip.
Give it a go if you're watching. Yeah, try and twizzle whilst you're painting and putting that little bit of texture on the capybara. Excellent.
Yeah, and it's much harder for me to control the shapes on this, because it's actually it's tiny. What I'm working on is actually tiny because it's only about 13 centimeters across, my painting. It's really little on this tiny iPad I've got here. And yeah, so which is why I zoom in occasionally, just to make it a little bit easier. I'm going to quickly sketch in some other capybara as we go.
Brilliant.
So
So
on
of
that.
course, if you're watching, you can add some more in, or you can carry on with the capybara that you're painting at the moment. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Now, John, we're only here for an hour and a quarter today, but
Yes.
Dover Park Primary would like to ask, how long does it take to create a typical painting from idea all the way to completed piece ready to exhibit?
It depends on the size of the painting and where I am. So with the northern white rhinos, I only had about an hour or so, and I had to do the painting in that time. I didn't even know it was that long. It felt like forever. So if I've got an hour, I'll make it work in the hour. It might not be, well, it's never going to be the world's best painting. That's a given. But I'll make it work. Other paintings, I've been working on a really large painting in my studio. And I've been working on that for 2 weeks because it's in my studio and it's a very big scene of daffodils looking across to St Michael's Mount in Cornwall. It's beautiful and I'm really enjoying it. But the daffodils aren't in my studio. It's not even spring anymore. It's summer. So it's all having to come from within. I can't see it. In the rainforest, typically, I would do a 2-foot square or 61 centimeters square canvas, and that would typically take about two to 3 hours at the most. I find I wouldn't get the attention of my hosts for much longer than a couple of hours. They will want to be doing other things. They want to be showing me other things. And when I was painting in the Philippines, it was the same thing. If I could get a couple of hours painting the rice harvest, it's for the United Nations Year of Rice of all things, then my security team I had to have there just to look after my safety. After 2 hours of stood in the Philippine sun, they were like, we're out of here. You're coming back to base right now. So it does depend on the situation. So yeah, so out and about, last chance to painting, probably a couple of hours is what I would say.
Lovely. So yeah, being quite adaptable as well. I have just put in the chat box as well for those of you that would like to watch after the webinar. You can see the clip of John painting those northern white rhinos, which is a really fantastic video to watch, and also it is an amazing painting as well. So please have a look at that after, and you can join the Last Chance to Paint Precious Africa expedition
Oh,
as well, which
it's
is
such
a
a
great
wonderful one to do. And in a minute, I'll just show you for the students and the teachers roughly what Last Chance to Paint looks like online. I'm just doing this baby capybara here because we've got to have a baby one. It's got a round bottom and there you go. But yeah, it was amazing. Kenya was just fantastic. And if you jump to about 2 minutes 50 seconds or 2 minutes 30 seconds, something like that, into that video that they put the link in, you'll jump straight to the rhinos. There's a preamble of the Conservancy wanted to show us a few things and talk about the equator. And if you want to skip that, jump to 2 minutes. I think it's 2 minutes 50 in, then you'll jump straight to the rhinos. And it was very, very emotional moment for me because when you get to paint the last 2 animals of megafauna of a subspecies, it is a moving moment. And I hope you will all do your own rhino paintings and send them into Last Chance to Paint and maybe feel a connection as well, because those connections, I hope, well, certainly with me, they're always lifelong, and it helps me to tread gently, like Charlie was saying, to reduce the amount of meat you eat, have a more of a plant-based diet, to be wary of what we consume and what we use, to reuse things or to use if there's clothing that you can borrow or get from a secondhand or from a charity shop that's often almost new anyway, do that just to reduce consumption. Right, I'm just going to zoom out so you can see where we are, and then very briefly, can I just show the website while the children catch up? Do you think that will work
absolutely.
or not?
Yeah, go for it. So we've obviously put the chat box, we've put a link to Last Chance to Paint videos, which you can find on YouTube, but also you can find all the expeditions that John has taken part in on this website. So I'll pass it over to you, John.
Yeah, so the Last Chance to Paint website is built for schools, for the children, for the teachers to use. We're getting 50,000 to 60,000 children a year engaged with this. We want to grow it as fast as we can. It's completely free. It's supported with time and energy particularly from the Born Free Foundation. The Eden Project help a bit, and also Earth Day occasionally point things at us, but it's Eden, Born Free are our key working partner. I've jumped straight into the Spirit of the Rainforest Amazon page here. So you'll find this under the expeditions menu on the top. And we also do 3 webinars a year. But in addition to the webinars, we've got this big scheme of work. So here you can see this is Nishiwaka Yawanawa painting in the rainforest. And what we offer you here, I think is very special. We give a reason why you should engage with this project. There's a few key quotes you'll come across, but I just want to scroll you down. So for teachers, you can download full teaching resources straight from test.com via this link. You're going to get teacher notes, and you're going to get lesson plans that you can deliver to the children. And they're really good. They're interactive. They're going to do the full curriculum for you from geography through to painting and everything in between. So do grab those. And then you get these 4 sections. So on the left, you get videos. You can play a daily video to the class and join us traveling. So I was there in 2019, but you can deliver it as if it's live. If you send me questions, which you can, so you watch the video, read the daily blog. If your class has questions, you can send them in on that link. I will answer them. And if I don't know the answer, I'll get Charlie to answer it. I'll ask her. And we also have a resource of all my paintings, Nishiwaka's paintings, music we recorded at the tribe from ceremonies, which you can play in your class as background. It's beautiful. And photographs. So fantastic resources. We give you the why we did it, the where we did it, what we want you to do. And then there are lots of key videos. This is a beautiful one of the Yawanawa children also painting for Last Chance to Paint. And then you can share all of this on our World Gallery. So if the children do a completed piece of work, you can send it in to us, and we will then exhibit it on our World Gallery alongside my work and the work of other tribal children or tribal children around the world. So we have 3 schemes of work. We have the Amazon on the left there, sponsored by Procreate. We've got the orangutans and the Penan tribe in Borneo, sponsored by Innova Art. And we have the wonderful expedition in Kenya, supported by Born Free. And there'll be more in the future. But that's a brief view of the website. It's really rich, really unique resource. Please use it. Right, back to the painting, which will be here. Don't want to bring up the line. We're not doing lines today. There we go. Right, so I'm going to put in some more capybara. How are we doing for time?
Lovely. We've got about 15 minutes left, John. It's looking great. We've had quite a few classes ask whether you've got a favourite animal, first of all, and also a favourite animal in the Amazon.
Gosh, I like so many animals. In the Amazon, I really love the Morpheus butterfly, which sounds like a strange animal to choose, doesn't it? Because it's an insect.
Amazing.
They are huge. If I put my hands up like that, they're about that big. About that big, an adult
wow.
one. And they're metallic, iridescent blue. They're absolutely beautiful. So the butterflies are extraordinary. And you'll see so many butterflies in and around the river on the videos that hopefully you can show the children. But in terms of if I had to choose an animal, I change this every webinar, right? So I seem very disingenuous here. I'm going to go for those 2 northern white rhino because I've spoken about it today. That is an extraordinary animal. You know, it's kind of like almost armor-plated. It's a herbivore. And it's very striking to me that in 30 years, we've reduced a thriving subspecies, the northern white rhino, in 30 years through habitat destruction, through a war that was going on in their territory, and through poaching for the horn for supposedly medicines, Asian medicines, which there's nothing special about rhino horn. It's got the same chemistry as your fingernails or hair. And in 30 years, we've reduced that whole species to 2. So let's not do that one. But yeah, that's
it's a good story to learn from, isn't it, John? It's incredibly sad, but hopefully it means that in the future going forward, we can make sure that we protect species and we look after them and care for them in their habitats.
Yeah, and do you know, it only needs to be terribly sad if we don't learn from it. If we learn from it, then I think we move on, because we all make mistakes. But as a species, we need to stop doing this. Because, you know, I just want to make this really clear. There are lots of other rhino species. This is a subspecies I'm talking about. It's not all rhinos by any means. However, they are all threatened. But something or even the capybara, every animal has its place, and it helps to create habitat. So just the way the capybara will be grazing and moving and burrowing and swimming, they're maintaining the habitat for everybody, for everything. And that's very
Absolutely.
particularly true of megafauna like an elephant or a rhino. They will be literally creating the water hollows and molding the landscape, and where they have a dust bath, that what's left there, it creates habitats for everything. And everything in our ecosystem, from every ant to every bee to every hedgehog to every rhino, is part of our life support system.
Absolutely. So we need wildlife to stay in the wild. And your painting is very cute, John. I think capybaras are incredibly cute anyway, but actually their cuteness in a way is a little bit of their own downfall, really. Because it
Yeah,
means that they're becoming increasingly popular as pets. And whilst people might think actually they look very similar to a guinea pig, they're in the same family as a guinea pig, unlike a guinea pig which has been domesticated over thousands of years, really, living alongside people for a huge amount of time. Capybaras are wild animals, and they really do not make good pets. Um, they like to be in water most of the time. They need clean, fresh running water where they can submerge themselves. They also even live in quite large herds as well. They're a really sociable animal, and they can live in herds of up to 100. So one or two capybara living on their own, it's really not
yeah.
appropriate for them to live like that, and they can actually get quite stressed as
The
well, being
pets
in such a small group.
Yeah, the exotic pet trade, and this comes down to governments a lot, but there's also illegal smuggling. But it is a nightmare. It is a complete nightmare, because not only is it a nightmare for any animal to not be living in its natural habitat, um, but it creates habitat destruction, it creates extinction events, and it also people quickly find the naive people that might take on an animal like a capybara or orangutan, or it's happening in all sorts of species. They quickly find they cannot cope with this
Mm,
animal at all.
yeah, they're
So
very
it's
difficult to look after.
a very sad it's a very sad thing that goes on. However, again, the positive thing, if people are made aware, and I firmly believe that if young people like yourselves who are listening are aware of all these things, then we have a really positive future ahead of ourselves. So it's not all doom and gloom. It's just it's basically knowing that it's unsafe to walk on thin ice means that we don't go on thin ice. Knowing that we shouldn't be destroying our ecosystem, but because there's only a finite amount of it, we've got to be in balance, means that we will be safe, and so will the wildlife, and so on and so forth. It's like that. But knowledge is everything, isn't it?
Absolutely, for
You
sure.
know,
So yeah, knowledge is power. So yeah, actually being aware of these issues is half the battle. So
it is. Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Brilliant. We've got quite a few questions still.
yeah,
Um,
that's great.
John, so we might, because we've got about 10 minutes left, if we can kind of keep them to short answers, if
Yeah,
that's possible. I know it's so
I will
easy
try.
to,
I will try.
it's so easy to talk about all your amazing work. But I will get going. So, um, do you have a favorite Amazonian bird to paint? Because obviously you spoke about birds earlier.
Yeah, I love macaws. I love the scarlet macaw, beautiful, and you'll see that in our teacher resources when you download and study that project. Scarlet macaw, fantastic bird to paint,
Oh, they
beautiful.
are beautiful. Absolutely brilliant. And do you have a favorite Amazon painting that you did, or that you're still creating possibly?
The yeah, there are two. One I did with Nishiwaka, actually, the Eden Project, which was their story of how mortality and then everlasting life came to the tribe. I won't go into all that now, but that was a very special painting to work on side by side with him. And I did a lovely painting. Um, uh, Not so much the painting, but the feeling behind the painting was when they had a poorly person. So we painted the rainforest, and we painted a shaman who's their spiritual leader. When somebody's poorly, they will say effectively prayers or their chants into a special shamanic pot, basically a clay pot in a certain shape. And all this good energy goes into the pot, and then that's taken to heal the person. That those paintings where they allow me to share in their culture and belief system are very special.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you, John, for sharing that. Um, gosh, we've got so many about your favorite paintings or the first painting you created. What painting you're most proud of as well.
Oh gosh, they're so hard. So I've been painting since a child, but one of my first paintings I did when I did a painting when I came back from the Amazon, which I still got, which was it was bright oranges and bright reds and really vivid greens. And you don't see all that in the rainforest, but you'll see bright red on the core, yeah, and you'll see bright oranges in the food and in the fruit. I put it all into a rainforest scene with a made up bird, and I love that painting. I've still got that. So that's sort of special. And what was the second part of the question?
What are you most proud of? So I think you've kind of covered that with your
Yeah,
amazing bird
yeah,
painting, which is
yeah.
fantastic. Lovely. Um, Brilliant.
Any more questions?
There's a lot. I'm just sifting through them now. Um, have there been any challenges that you've come up against whilst you've been painting or as an artist? That's a great question.
Yeah, all the time. So sometimes people don't want an artist painting. So in Peru, when I was doing of all things the potato harvest, again for the United Nations Year of the Potato, incredible crop. Blue potatoes, pink potatoes, long potatoes, yellow potatoes, not like the potatoes you would see in the UK. Um, there, I had to pay the farmers so that I could stand there for a couple of hours and paint with them. And I'd have to give them a particular plant that they wanted, and then I'd have to drink beer with them and make blessings to Pachamama. And you have to be respectful everywhere you go, whether that's in Cornwall or whether that's in Peru or whether that's in with the Maasai tribe in Kenya. Always be respectful and always do as you're told.
That's a great lesson for all life, really. Being respectful and kind to everyone, which
Yes.
is great. Um, Benji would love to know what's your favorite color.
Well, that's a really good one. So I love all the colours. I suppose blues and turquoises are very restful, and I like them because of that. So blues and turquoises I use a lot of that. You know, the sky is a really restful colour, but it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick a colour. I mean,
Blue's great.
I love red. I would have a red top. I chose red, but yeah, I love blue. Blue's good. It's the colour of our planet.
No, I love it. Brilliant. And we've got a question from Westfield Junior School. So why are you fascinated by the Amazon?
I think it's because, well, I'll tell you what. Well, it's two things. As a child, I used to read. I didn't used to read a lot. I used to do mainly art, but I used to read a series of books called Something Adventure. So there was one called Volcano Adventure. But the one that really struck me was called Amazon Adventure. And as a child, I loved this book, and it spoke about the rivers, it spoke about the forest, it spoke about the wildlife, it spoke about tapirs. And this is like I never forgot that. So I always wanted to go to the rainforest to see the tapir. Naive, no, I wasn't ever going to see tapir, but I wanted to go there. So when I had the opportunity to go as a student, I was like, and it was my idea. It was like, we will give you X amount of money to do a project somewhere in the world. And I said, well, how about I go to the Amazon? And they said, great. And I was like, oh, I'm going. Simple as that. So, and then of course that we feel that sort of like passion for the Amazon, and then meeting Nishiwaka in 2015, painted with him for 10 days at Eden Project, and learned all about the spirituality, like Ushiiva, their water spirit, and all the water from the Amazon rainforest comes through her hair. There's so much to learn. So do look at our resources. And yeah, and then going back in 2019, and then just being in touch with the tribe. There's so much to learn from indigenous cultures, so much to learn.
Amazing. Thanks so much, John. So yeah, we're coming towards the end. So I'm going to give one final question. And it's if you could paint only one more animal, this is a tricky one, John, what would you pick to paint and why?
Gosh, one more animal. Just one more animal. Oh, I needed to know. There's a parrot. I can't remember its name. You might know the name of it. There's a parrot in New Zealand that inspired Douglas Adams to
I know
run.
the one.
Do you know the name?
I do. It's called a kakapo.
Yeah, the kakapo. I'd love to paint that parrot. It's still seriously endangered, and its story basically go back a long way, fired up what we're doing today through the work of the author Douglas Adams when he did Last Chance to See. I would love to do that. Go
Amazing. Oh, lovely. And again, if you don't know what a kakapo is, definitely go and look up images of that after. It is the world's only ground lit dwelling parrot, so it lives on the floor. There's only, I think, around 100 of them living in the
Yeah,
wild, which is really sad. Um, but
yeah.
they are slowly building up their numbers through keeping breeding programs in the wild in their natural habitat, which is amazing. So they're working really hard to protect that species of parrot.
And
But
again, that's the story I read as a child through a Douglas Adams book, Last Chance to See. And yeah, the numbers have not built up, but it's still with us, but it needs attention. So that might be a Last Chance to Paint project at some stage.
amazing. But yeah, definitely look them up. They are beautiful little parrots and they look like little gentlemen. Really funny little birds, which yeah, all absolutely deserve to be looked after and cared for.
Well
Um,
done for remembering the name. That's amazing.
that is because they're very cool. I do like birds as well. So yeah, absolutely. Would love to see a kakapo one day. But brilliant. Well, I hope we've got a last couple of seconds left, really, last 2 minutes or so before we finish. But I hope everyone's enjoyed it. I hope you've had a really lovely time painting, and we'd absolutely love to be able to see your paintings as well. So if your school has a social media channel, please do tag Last Chance to Paint, tag John Dyer, tag Born Free. We'd love to be able to see the paintings that you've created today.
Yeah.
I'm sure
I'll
they look
comment. I will
fantastic.
comment on everything I see. So if you at us in or hashtag, I try and find them. I'll make a comment, something really encouraging. I'd love to see it. Send, and we can use those images to show to people that yes, we're doing some good. That's really important if you can do that.
Absolutely.
And please run our big expeditions as well. You literally love it. This is like an easy thing to do in and out, but you all will end up with a very similar painting, which is great. But the big expeditions, those schemes of work on Last Chance to Paint, every child can make their own personal response. Somebody might do macaw in the rainforest, somebody might do tapirs, somebody might do the tribe, somebody might do the spirits. That's even more powerful. When that goes on the fridge for the next 20 years, that's an even more powerful message back to that family.
Amazing. No, thanks, John. And also as well, if you don't have a social media for your school as well, Laura has just popped into the chat box the World Gallery link as well. So you can always submit your paintings from today in there as well, which would be
Please
great.
do.
We'd love to see them. Brilliant. And as well as that, say obviously Last Chance to Paint resources on the Last Chance to Paint and Born Free website. We have a range of free teaching resources as well. And we run free outreach workshops around rainforests, animals in captivity and animals under threat as well. So if you're interested, please do get in touch with us. Send us an email, education@bornfree.org.uk. You can see more details in the chat box. But John, I absolutely love this. I think this is an adorable painting. I love capybara anyway, but this looks fantastic, and I absolutely love that amazing meander that you've managed to paint in as well. It really is just such a great painting.
Thank you. It's just what it's like. In a few moments, we can talk about capybara, learn about the world, have a great time, hopefully with some paints, learn about art. What could be better?
Amazing. Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed learning all about the Amazon, all about capybara, and enjoyed painting as well today. We've had a lovely time. We hope you had too. But a huge thank you from us and from John, and hopefully we'll see you at another event soon. So have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.